all geopolitics. I don't know, it's a little country, but important countries, but so are we important. I mean, New Zealand, Belgium, Holland, wonderful, great countries, but not entirely the same, if I say so, geographical lead as India and Russia. So that was the mindset of Jiang Zemin. Hu Jintao is an entirely different mindset, which is why he's not at all popular in the Western press. His mindset is Asia will rise again. Asia has historically been the #1 continent in the world, and of course, what is left unsaid to non-Chinese is China has historically been the core of Asia. So the #1 in the #1 is China. The prince among the princes is China. King among the princes is China, but the growth of Asia. And Hu Jintao made a deliberate policy of broadening China's diplomatic reach beyond Europe and America, where it was concentrated, into Asia, Africa, Latin America. Today, in 10 years' time, across the continents, China has come as the first or second trading partner of practically every large country in the world. Either the #1 or #2, but definitely among the top 5 of almost every country in the world. And that is a conscious effort by Hu Jintao to expand China's reach across the world. The second thing was to compete with Western companies rather than cooperate with them. Jiang Zemin said, we'll buy your technology, we'll assemble it, we won't compete with you. We'll produce low-end stuff. You produce high-end stuff. We are both friendly with each other. Hu Jintao said, wait a minute. Why should, and I spent a lot of time in China. I spent a lot of time talking to people in policy-making circles there. So they kept saying that, look, Nike produces some boots. We produce the boots. You produce the leather. And Nike gets a markup of 18 times on the boots that you produce. We get 1/18 of what Nike gets, or Reebok. Why should we do that? Why don't we have more technology? So the next stage is going to be branding. The stage 1 is technology. Stage 2 is going to be branding. But he consciously tried to compete with Western companies across the world, especially in non-Western markets. So today China has become a huge threat, if I may say so, to the domination of Western companies in these markets. This Asianist strategy, the Chinese thing, all that has made Mr. Hu quite unpopular in Western geopolitics. Extremely unpopular, if I may say so, in Western geopolitics. He's very inconvenient to them. Now, this is regarding internal management. Now, if you look at the Western press, Hu Jintao is a hardliner, and the reality is, as far as I understand it, he is basically in favor of a traditional Chinese line of, if you use force, you're actually losing the game. Now, an example of this is Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is an island where I have gone, I think, not as many times as I've gone to China, but significantly a large number of times. I think I've played a reasonably small role in India-Taiwan relations, etc., including getting Taiwanese to come to Manipal. From early next year, you're going to have 2 or 3 Taiwanese professors staying in Manipal to teach Chinese. But Jiang Zemin went in for missiles, sending in Chinese warships, firing off missiles, that kind of threats, etc. And it created a strong revulsion among Taiwanese people. Hu Jintao wanted a sunshine policy. Forget the missile. Big smile. Chinese tourists, Chinese soap opera, Chinese silk. We are such simple people, and we never even think of violence. Why are we having the PLA? Because we like to see people in uniform on television. they look great on television. And let me be honest with you, the only theatre where the PLA has ever been active is on television. They've not been active in any field of war anywhere in the world. They've been active on television, so I'm not entirely sure. Our chaps have been active in fields of war, and they don't look very good on TV. I can tell you, the people the PLA selects look brilliant on TV. The women are most charming, the men are most dashing, they look terrible on television. But anyway, so he started this sunshine policy towards Taiwan. Today, from 0, the number of flights has gone up to about 1,000. Today, more than 1.5 million Chinese mainland tourists are visiting Taiwan every year. 1.5 million. 2 million Taiwanese are staying in China. Last year, there were 186,000 marriages between Chinese women and Taiwanese men. The total number of marriages between Chinese women and Taiwanese men has crossed 800,000. Now, these are Chinese women. They go to stay in Taiwan, their uncle is there, aunt is there, everybody is there in China. They have a very strong vested interest in good relations. They form a very strong lobby. So these guys, the husband is not going to vote for any party that wants to rock the boat. The husband will definitely cast the ballot for a pro-China party, otherwise the wife is going to certainly have some strong words for him when he comes back home from the ballot box. And I think all of us will agree that that's a pretty strong inducement to stick to the state narrative. So the fact of the matter is that the relationship has flowered. Across the board, he has been stressing what's called harmony. Now, this is slightly dissonant with what has been happening on South China Sea, XYZ, etc. So why has this happened? This has happened because the Jiang Zemin people have made a power grab. They made an effort to grab power in China away from the Hu Jintao. And Xi Jinping was a kind of a compromise candidate of Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. Around 2004, 2005, 2006, they decided we'll have Xi Jinping. He was neither with Jiang nor with Hu, so there was a compromise candidate. Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping's relationship developed pretty fast. So by 2009, Jiang Zemin felt, I don't want Xi Jinping, I want somebody else. Now remember, he had the media with him, he had the military with him, he had the SOE, state-owned enterprise, he had the judiciary. The Chinese judges were very much dominated by people who were close to Jiang. Zhao Yangkang, that is the standing committee member in charge of secret security, was a Jiang Zemin man. Most of the key generals in the military were Jiang Zemin people. Almost all the PAP, the People's Armed Police, the militia, was Jiang Zemin's people. An enormously powerful person, which is why Hu Jintao could not really succeed in getting many of his policies implemented in China, although he took charge in 2002. For 6-7 years, he was not able to get much of his policies implemented in China because of the power of the Jiang faction. But then I think Jiang Zemin kind of overreached himself and tried to replace Xi Jinping with somebody else. At that point in time, I would say he overreached himself. The person he chose for that was Mr. Bo Xilai. Bo Xilai was his enforcer. He said, you go and you attack Xi Jinping. And then the overseas media in China started planting stories about how Xi Jinping's family has got millions of dollars. I mean, this thing, lots of that Xi Jinping tends to sleep in the meeting or things like that. And I'm sure it's not correct because you don't do that in the Chinese Politburo. But the fact of the matter is that these stories started getting planted in Chinese media. I think Mr. Xi Jinping realized at this point in time that neutrality was no longer an option. He went firmly into the Hu Jintao camp. So roughly, I mean, it's very hard to really say when, but roughly around 2010, the third quarter of 2010, I think Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping came together. From then on, I think it was the end of the line for Jiang Zemin. So after that, there's been huge changes in the People's Armed Police. A lot of people have been changed there. A lot of judges have been changed. A lot of military people have been changed. And just recently, 2 vice chairmen have been appointed to the Central Military Commission, both of whom are, one is loyal to Hu, one is loyal to Xi. So Jiang Zemin, and most importantly, when I was in Beijing about 8-9 days ago, Jiang Zemin was asked to leave the office. He had a huge building in Beijing which was his office. It was technically a Central Military Commission built building. 2 floors were his office. I had again once, an amazing office. 2 entire floors for him. Mr. Zemin was told that this office is now being renovated. Somebody else may come, so kindly leave. So he has been asked to leave that office. In China, this kind of symbolism is very, very important. So the fact that Mr. Jiang Zemin has been leaving his huge office in Beijing was indicated, in my view, that he has lost the game. If you guys go to Sunday Guardian, the newspaper in Delhi, and you check my front page article on Xi-Hu alliance, you will find that capsule form I've said that Xi and Hu together have eliminated the Jiang Zemin set and are now in control of China. So it's in this context of a very strong power play. It's as nasty as the power play between Mamata Banerjee and the Marxists, I would say. Even more nasty than it. But don't think that India is the only country where politicians fight each other. The Chinese Communist Party people fight all the time, but it doesn't come to the media. Now, in the case of Bo Xilai, everybody started concentrating on some poor Haywood who was murdered. Now, frankly, I mean, I've been to China very, very times. One person being murdered is no big deal in China, or in India for that matter. I mean, there are states in India where if you don't have a murder every day in the newspaper, you read murder if you're in that state. In some other part of the country, you don't really know where you are actually from. So the same thing is there in China. So it's no big deal that you've got a murder taking place. But the entire Western media and following the Western media, Indian media have gone on this big thing of Bo Xilai's wife has been accused of killing. The real reason why Bo Xilai is paying this price is that he was part of a coup against Xi and coup. It's nothing to do with his wife getting involved with a British guy or his wife getting whatever. I mean, that's only a red herring. And everybody jumped on the red herring. In my personal view, the real reason is Bo's being one of the leaders of this faction. And interestingly, there's only one article I saw in Financial Times about the coup, an attempted coup in China. Now, we had an article in the Indian Express about a military coup. And I'm happy to say that the Sunday Guardian, I wrote it the very next day, that this was planted by Mr. Chidambaram, who was then the Home Minister. I mean, I was the one who was briefed by responsible people in government that Mr. Chidambaram had planted it. I'm not going to reveal my sources. So I wrote a byline piece that no, this is a plant, there was no coup, and the Home Minister was behind this. Mr. Chidambaram was behind the Indian Express story. Indian Express did not deny it, Chidambaram did not deny it, unfortunately, because I was given some transcripts of telephone conversations which he and his son had with some journalists who are friends of mine, so I'm not going to name them. Anyway, but what I'm saying is the Financial Times carried a long piece, a long article they carried on the coup in China. Now, this being China, the man, the correspondent has got a Chinese wife. She's got Chinese relatives. Like the dog that did not bark. Nothing has happened to the correspondent. He's happily gallivanting around China. He's happily moving around Beijing in the high-speed railway, etc. and all that. His wife and her family are also happily gallivanting around, having, going to each other and having little dinner parties and all. Nothing has happened. Which leads me to conclude that it was a very clear indication that to the world that yes, a coup was planned. And my information is also that Jiang Zemin tried a coup to displace Xi and to displace Hu. And he relied on his support in the judiciary, PAP, etc. The mistake the journalist made, he was a New Zealander, he confused the PLA with the PAP.
So Jiang Zemin was supporting Bo Xilai.
He was supporting Bo Xilai. And in fact, he wanted to use the PAP to create a situation in which the standing committee members, a majority of whom were loyal to Jiang Zemin, will stand up and tell Mr. Hu, please resign. You cannot control the situation, please resign. So there was an effort at a coup. These guys hit back, and they hit back by arresting Mr. Wong, that police chief. He went to the US Embassy. Now again, the story put out is that he went to the US Embassy about a murder plot. In my view, and the information I have, he went to the US Embassy with a clear thing about how Bo Xilai was planning a coup. And the Americans immediately communicated that to the Chinese side. Immediately. Which is why the police officer concerned has got a very light sentence, is likely to be a free man in 2 or 3 years. Otherwise, as a traitor, he would have been shot by now. So, according to the information I have, he didn't go and communicate about a murder plot, which, as you know, in China, murders take place as often as they do in India. He communicated about an attempted coup by Mr. Jiang Zemin, and this was the news to Mr. Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping, and they realized seriousness of it, and that's why they moved with ruthless efficiency to eliminate the Jiang Zemin people from the PAP, from the judiciary, from the military. Roughly 600,000 people, 600,000 officials have been subjected to some form or the other of administrative punishment in China over the last 15 to 16 months. 6 lakh officials. And these mean a written reprimand, an oral reprimand to being shot in the head and sent off from this world to another world. 600,000. That has been the huge churning that has taken place in the Chinese bureaucracy as a result of this infighting, which frankly very few of us are ever talking about or ever writing about. But this new standing committee of the Politburo that's now set up represents the Xi-Hu faction. So what is it like? What are we likely to see in the Xi-Hu faction? One is, in terms of social policy, we are likely to see a much more middle class and lower class friendly, much more populist policies in the part of the Communist Party. They are likely to see much more gestures towards cheaper housing, cheaper healthcare. We are likely to see more rights given to migrant labor, for example. Externally, we are likely to see again a return to the policy of so-called harmony. Jiang Zemin tried to whip up through Bo Xilai nationalistic passions, military, talking about this South Sea Island, this etc. In my view, that is a Jiang Zemin policy. Whipping up tension with Japan and other things, and creating a feeling that China is going to go on the offensive and invade. I believe that policy is going to be rolled back. It's a forecast. I may be wrong in that forecast, but this is my belief that now that these two guys have won, they're going to go back to the traditional policy of carry a big stick, but be very, very softly and keep it hidden behind your back. So nobody really sees the stick, they only see the smile on your face. That's Deng Xiaoping's policy. And that's a policy that served China very well in the 3 years. So one, better social policy. Two, lot more benefits to the poor, etc., not just any top-down policy. Three, very importantly, I believe there's going to be a significant dilution of the monopoly positions and concessions given to state-owned enterprises. In China, SOEs have been a very strong power base of the rival faction. So the idea will now be to give the private sector in China, private Chinese people, equal access to credit and other facilities so they can compete also in the global market. It's helpful to China also because you can block a state-owned enterprise in China from coming into a market saying it's linked to the government. You can't block a private Chinese entrepreneur on the security ground. He's a private man. How can you block him? So it suits the Chinese also, and I think this could trigger definitely a wave of faster economic growth in China. If the private sector can be, according to the information I have, 2008, 2009, Premier Wen Jiabao wanted to introduce such reforms, but he was blocked by Jiang Zemin's people from doing so because they want to have this monopoly position. In India also, you see, politicians prevent economic reform because they have got monopoly interests and monopoly positions, and their profits are at stake, so they block it. The same thing has happened in China. I believe now that Hu and Xi have won, we're going to have a lot of big bang reforms in China in terms of private sector, etc. being given. So far as India is concerned, Mr. Hu has always been Asian. And whenever you think Asian, you cannot ignore India. Is the other billion-dollar country, not billion-dollar country, a billion people. Each person is worth much more than $1 billion. But it's the other billion people country in Asia. So, in my view, we're going to have a strong Chinese diplomacy towards India. And I will urge you to keep a watch on November 26, 27, when the India-China strategic dialogue takes place in Delhi. I think we're going to have more than 150 people are going to come from the Chinese side. Unprecedentedly large number. And I believe we're going to see a lot of, we're likely to see a lot of understandings take place on economics and other fields, which makes it easier for both sides to do trade with each other. For the simple reason, Indian business wants that. Today, you can't go to Western markets for money. You can't go to Western market technology, they don't give you technology. You have to go to Chinese banks for money. You have to go to Chinese companies for cheap technology and for cheap production. So business-driven engagement with China is on the cards. And that is coming through very, very soon. So that's...
We would like to know more about this Pussy alliance. How did it work? Because she was, she always was maintaining a low profile in the Politburo and the Senate committee. So how it happened all of a sudden that Xi Jinping became so powerful man now?
See, you must go into the personality of Mr. Xi Jinping. As I said, those who have been with him, talked to him, etc., say that he's basically fairly relaxed, a very more affable kind of person, likes to take people. One thing you must understand about people, age of even Jiang Zemin is over. Hu Jintao, with each, after Mao, every successive leader of China has been less powerful than the previous leader. Mao was all powerful. Deng was super powerful. Jiang was powerful. Hu Jintao was strong. Xi Jinping is likely to be much less strong than Hu Jintao. It's going to be much more of a collective system. So in that sense, I would say that he is an ideal personality for that kind of a courageous man. They're not looking for a man on horseback. They're not looking for a Mikhail Gorbachev, definitely. They're not looking for a Mao Zedong. They've had enough of one Mao Zedong and more than enough. So they're looking for a guy who can run a regional thing of 7 people. The reason why they've abandoned 9 is decision making in 9 is very difficult. Because it's all unanimous. And convincing 9 people is very difficult than convincing 7 people. It might go back to 5 next time, after 10 years. it may happen that way. But Xi Jinping's very quality that you mentioned, Arvind, of being quiet, low-key, is probably the reason why it came as a compromise.
So the current standing committee will be moderate towards India or strategically?
As I said, Arvind, the PLA is still negative on India, but trade is rising at a very high level. In 3 years, when it crosses $150 billion, the PLA will be told to stand in its corner and keep shut. I'm quite certain about that. So the Chinese are now the shopkeepers, much more than the British. For them, it's money, money, money that counts. And India is now a very strong market for them. So, see, I've always said this for the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, to my Chinese friends, you guys spend money on the Pakistanis and make money from India. So which country is better? You know, a country on which you spend money or a country on which you make money. So you decide, you know, and I hope you decide the right thing, and I hope you guys are smart. So I believe that, look, we have taken a bet in Manipal, relationship is going to be strong. We have gone ahead with this China initiative on that basis. So my answer to your question is fairly obvious.